Right now, speaking of New York, judges there are deciding a fascinating question: whether an elephant can legally be considered a person. Yeah, it's part of this really closely watched case to figure out, can basic human rights be extended to animals? The Non-Human Rights Project argues in court that Happy, look at Happy, 51-year-old elephant, that she's self-aware, that she's autonomous, that she's entitled to the same rights as a human. They say if she's considered a person, being kept at the Bronx Zoo would be illegal imprisonment. They want her at a sanctuary. But the Bronx Zoo is saying, no, hang on, Happy is definitely just an elephant. And they say, by the way, she's also being treated really well at the zoo. Danny Cevallos joins me now to explain. So, Danny, the court is now deciding as we speak. We don't know the timeline, but they're deciding now, is an elephant entitled to the same human rights as a person? This Human Rights Project says Happy should get to be able to go to court over what they see as her illegal imprisonment. Talk about the evidence here.
Human Rights Project is arguing for personhood for Happy, but even they admit that personhood is not the same thing as a human being. Personhood has had kind of a hazy definition in American law over the last several centuries, and that includes going back to English common law. A corporation can be a person, but sometimes a fetus is not a person. So personhood and human being are not always the same thing, and even Human Rights Project, they're not even arguing that. But on the other hand, they do argue that because we have extended personhood in many different ways to things like corporations, well, Happy has autonomy, and therefore he has some right to liberty. Now, the respondents, the Bronx Zoo, they're arguing essentially, number one, essentially, who are you to say where Happy would be happier? You say that, you know what, there's no discussion of what's best for Happy. Instead, there's an argument that Happy must be a person. But assuming we can figure that out, and assuming Happy does have this autonomy, well, then now what? How do we figure out what exactly it is that he wants? And they also point out that no court has ever granted personhood to an animal for purposes of what's called habeas corpus. And that's what's being used here. It's a vehicle to challenge someone's detention, usually in prison or detention by the police or something like that.
We've been showing pictures in court of the arguments that went down about 24 hours ago. Let me play what one of the members of the court had to say.
So does that mean that I couldn't keep a dog? I mean, dogs can memorize words. Why isn't then what you're arguing for endangering these kinds of human-animal relationships?
So what was the response? Because the question seems to be, hey, if we grant personhood to Happy the elephant, what stops us from granting personhood to, you know, Rex my dog, or, you know, Stinky the rat or whatever?
It is the slipperiest of slippery slopes. I mean, if you grant personhood to Happy, then what's to prevent us from never eating a steak or a hamburger again? Because those come from animals that arguably have feelings or autonomy or arguably personhood. So you're exactly right that the justice in that case sees on an important issue. And the other thing, too, is that even if the petitioners are right and Happy does have a right to liberty, well, first, how do you find out where Happy wants to be? Maybe Happy likes where he is more than this sanctuary that they want to send him to. I mean, when you take most children, for example, want to stay where they are rather than go to some new unfamiliar place. Happy might be the same way. And then what if Happy's right to liberty? What if we determine what Happy wants, and Happy wants to just wander through the streets of New York? We can't really have that either. So this is a very slippery slope, and the judges appear to be aware of that.
The Non-Human Rights Project has more than 1.5 million people, I think 1.4 million people who have signed on to this change.org petition who backs this, right? And let's be honest, elephants, there is this sort of cultural feeling towards elephants because they are incredibly intelligent animals and they do have a sense of community, and there's this really interesting research that's been done there. But if you look from a legal perspective in lower courts, a couple of them have sided with the Bronx Zoo before. So give me your Danny Cevallos lawyer hat reality check on this one, because it's a fascinating case, but where does this go? How do you think it's going to go, and when?
I can see the judge concluding or siding with the respondents in this case, with the Bronx Zoo, essentially saying that, look, even if animals are persons, we've never recognized that animals can challenge their detention, because arguably virtually every animal in the city of New York is detained on some level other than the rats and the pigeons. But for the most part, we detain our animals. And by the way, I can find plenty of dog owners, especially in this city, who probably think their dog, their sweet Snookums or Fluffy, is even smarter than Happy the elephant. And so it is, again, what are we going to start here? And I wouldn't be surprised if the New York court doesn't want to open up that can of worms, which non-intelligent or intelligent worms, either way.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.